Historian Andrew Reek's new book, Two Titans, One City, explores the lives and careers of Joseph Chamberlain and George Cadbury. These two men came to dominate the story of Birmingham in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Andrew came to Joseph Chamberlain's home, Highbury Hall, to discuss the lives of these very different men with Dr. Sally Hoban.
So Andrew, it's wonderful to be here today at Highbury Hall to talk about your new book. Why should we think of Joseph Chamberlain and George Cadbury as two titans, and why are they important?
In an heroic age of philanthropy and of public service in the 19th century in Birmingham, they stood out head and shoulders above their contemporaries. Joseph Chamberlain was the greatest mayor of Birmingham and of any town in the whole country for the last 200 years, probably. He was also a political organiser and electoral manager who became the model for political management in the whole English-speaking world. He was also the embodiment of British imperialism, particularly as author of the Boer War. He was also unique in splitting two political parties, and probably the greatest man never to be Prime Minister of Britain. George Cadbury was the creator of a worldwide brand, chocolate brand Cadbury. He was also the author of the first garden city in this country, Bourneville Village, which he built from scratch, and a welfare paternalist of his own firm, Cadbury's. He was also the leading Quaker of his generation, founder of 5 colleges here in Selly Oak in Birmingham, a philanthropist so important that he was interviewed by the Convocation Committee on Philanthropy in 1906 as an exemplar of giving in the modern world.
So both men were clearly great and important historical figures, but how similar were they?
Well, they were very similar in their background. They were both nonconformists. Both of them took over family factories. They were both commercial managers, actually. And both of them built them into worldwide enterprises. They were both to realise their workforces were inadequately educated by the system, the national system, which then prevailed, the voluntary system, and determined to do something about it in their own way. Both of them came to realise in time that actually that was not enough. It was no good cultivating a man's mind if he lived in a slum, and therefore they spent much of their lives focusing on the built environment and doing something about the conditions that working people lived in.
So lots of similarities between them as men, but did they not also differ sharply in their approaches and also the policies that they advocated?
I think this is the absolute heart of the matter, and for me, the thing that's really interesting about them. And the first thing to say is that the key difference is in them, the personalities. On the one hand, you have Chamberlain, autocratic, ambitious, belligerent, combative, dominating and domineering, a person who loved to be the focus of attention. George Cadbury is a quietist, saintly, withdrawn, preferring to work through others, not liking the spotlight. It's this which translates into the way that they will act differently. As far as Cadbury was concerned, what he wanted to do is to control his own patch, make that as perfect as he possibly could. And so a part of southwest Birmingham was a model for his social reforming. He had houses with ample gardens, ample green spaces, the encouragement to garden and to grow fruit. Chamberlain was completely different. As far as he was concerned, private philanthropy was a mere drop in the ocean. That really wouldn't cut it nationally. The only thing that would work was, first of all, municipal action, hence his dedication as a mayor to transforming the environment, the water, the sanitation, the lighting, the slums of central Birmingham. And he moved on to the national picture. The problems of education, the problems of working class housing, the problems of agricultural labourers' conditions. This could only be achieved by national action.
Did they ever become rivals with each other or come into direct conflict?
Their careers were asymmetrical. Chamberlain is by 1886 already a complete politician in the sense that he's been the mayor, he's been a cabinet minister, he has 17 years or so of experience behind him. He stood way above his contemporaries in the eyes of people like Winston Churchill, who saw him as a bit of a hero in his time. Cadbury has barely broken stride and had 1 year as a councillor. They'll go on through the 1890s with Chamberlain a national figure, Cadbury building his factory and then building his model village. It wasn't really until 1886 that their rivalry began. In 1886, Chamberlain broke Gladstone over Home Rule and split the Liberal Party. Cadbury followed Gladstone. Chamberlain created a whole new party in Birmingham over the course of the next few years. And that division was very definitely there. The thing that really accelerated Cadbury's disapproval of Chamberlain was the Boer War. He profoundly disapproved of imperial expansionism. Indeed, he changed the nature of Cadbury's advertising to cut out all imperial allusions after 1899 because he disapproved so profoundly. So much so that he, in fact, was drawn by David Lloyd George into purchasing the Daily News newspaper to be the only paper which stood out against the war, the only national paper. And that feeling of disapproval was very, very strong in Cadbury, accelerated by the fact that in 1903 Chamberlain came out for tariff reform against free trade. Cadbury was a committed free trader and indeed had sponsored free trade parties. And so the two were very divided over this. That is not to say that they ever argued publicly. So it was never a rivalry that became personal.
Andrew, how did their stories end and how should we remember them today?
Well, their story ended with their deaths. Joseph in 1914, but effectively he was out of commission from 1906 when he had a stroke. George Cadbury in 1922. As far as he was concerned, improving the conditions of his own environment that he could manage and make as perfect as possible was what it was all about. He was a great philanthropist, a great industrialist, building a worldwide brand, and the rebuilder of Quakerism in this country. Joseph Chamberlain was the first great middle-class statesman in British history. Birmingham was a West Midlands fortress, political fortress, which was impenetrable for nearly 70 years under the Chamberlain family. A unique situation in British history. No other politician, no Disraeli, no Peel, no Gladstone had anything like that. He was the person who made Birmingham count. Chamberlain made Birmingham really significant in national politics and the epicentre of provincial politics, if not national politics.
So just as my last question, Andrew, what personally drew you to the lives of these two great men?
That is a personal question. And I have to say that on the one hand, with Joseph Chamberlain, I find many of his characteristics are ones that chime with me. He's driven. He is someone who is goal-orientated. He likes achieving things, and I'm afraid he can be a bit ruthless on the way. And I find that attractive, even if other historians find it repellent, because I find it chimed with my own professional career. George Cadbury I find attractive because he's the polar opposite, and because actually it's admirable, and it's something I ought to aspire to and don't always, to be quiet and to let things happen in their own way.
Andrew Reig's book, Two Titans, One City, is available from History West Midlands or from bookstores and Amazon.